I believe the greatest need in the local church today, certainly in America, are church leaders who are kingdom-centered and biblically faithful. A confused world needs a faithful church. And I think it's time that we, as church leaders, offer the people who are entrusted by God to lead a better, higher, and kingdom-centered way forward.
Welcome to the Leading Second podcast, a space to help church leaders thrive in the second chair. The Leading Second podcast releases every Thursday morning, so hit subscribe and share this with your team. Now let's jump into another episode for all of us who lead from the middle.
Leading Second, welcome back to Season 7 of the Leading Second podcast. Of course, this is a space to help church leaders thrive in the second chair. My name is Brandon Stewart, and it is our honor to host you in this space today that we've created for all of us who lead from the middle. If you find today's episode helpful, I want to encourage you to download the episode guide that we've created for this episode and all episodes of the podcast. You can find that at leadingsecond.com/podcast. And we would be so honored if you would help us make some noise about the podcast today by sharing this with your team, posting on your social media platform, or even leaving us a rating or review. It all helps build the tribe and move the needle forward for the ministry. And before we get into our conversation today, which I'm really excited about, I want to personally invite you to consider joining us this fall for our new intake of Leading Second coaching groups. If you are an executive pastor, a campus pastor, or you serve in a role on your church's leadership team, then I believe our coaching groups program is for you. We've designed this 12-month cohort-centered journey to help you master the art of second chair leadership. Imagine a monthly coaching call with myself and our coaching team, some guest speakers and lectures throughout the year, and an on-site leadership summit in December for everyone involved in our coaching groups. It's an incredible place full of wisdom, a place we can walk together in ministry, master the art of second chair leadership, and gain relationships for a lifetime. If you'd like information on this, I'd encourage you to go to leadingsecond.com and you can click on coaching and coaching groups. And we'd love if you'd apply and consider joining us for what I believe could be a pivotal year for you as a second chair leader. Well, hey, this month we are back from our early summer break, and we are injecting into the summer a special summer series of episodes on the kingdom-centered leader. This month, we want to have some important conversations and call us all higher and back to the ways of the kingdom of God as church leaders. Our nation right now is having such a loud conversation on right and wrong. And who are we? Certainly here in America, we are. Social media only amplifies that. Every person can now gain a platform and make truth claims and go viral with no regard to the fruit of their statements or the validity of their claims. And then, of course, in an election year, all of this just is amplified and becomes louder. I fully expect the second half of this year to bring us things as church leaders in America that we may not have seen in our lifetime. It's just a vital and important year and time. And what I know is that a confused world needs a faithful church. And so we are launching this summer series to call us back to the ways of the kingdom. And I am so excited and I'm so honored that to kick off this conversation today, we have my pastor, Pastor Kevin Gerald, joining us for an important conversation that I believe will help frame in where we're going to go this month. Buckle up. It's going to be spicy. We're going to go there with some conversations that we need to be having as a church. We're not going to hold anything back. And I believe it's going to help us all to be kingdom-centered leaders. So without further ado, launching into this series, here's my conversation with Pastor Kevin Gerald. Well, today we have my favorite guest on the podcast. Help me welcome my pastor, Pastor Kevin, to the Leading Second podcast. So glad you're here today, sir.
Thank you, Brandon. I'm so happy to be here today, and not just to talk to you, but to talk to all of the Leading Second leaders. And I want to start by saying how valuable you are, how important you are as Leading Second leaders.
That's
I
right.
want to just say, don't underestimate your value. Don't let anything get in your mind to underestimate the key roles that you have in building the church. So I'm excited to actually sit down, have a good conversation.
Would you agree that I think it's got to be near impossible to have a healthy church without a healthy second chair team?
It's absolutely impossible. It just can't happen because it could be, it could be happy or healthy rather at the top, for example, but it has to go through the second chair. So it could be by then dirtied up, or it can be purified even more. So I think the second level, the one that's closest to the people and the interaction with the people, is always gonna generate the right attitudes, the right mindsets, etc., or the wrong ones.
Yeah. Well, I could talk leadership with you for hours, but that's actually not what we're here to do today. We are here to talk about the kingdom. And I'm so excited. We're kicking off a series of conversations that we're going to have this month on the podcast on the kingdom-centered leader. I remember being out praying during the summer of 2020, when we were all at home baking sourdough bread and, not doing anything. And I was out praying one day, and this was a big thought for me, was we're going to need more kingdom-centered leaders in the church, in the second chair. And I can't think of a voice that's been more helpful to me and to the church than you. I'm not just saying that because you're my pastor. You've been an amazing student and leader and champion in the last few years. I just want to honor you for that. Thank you for just your voice of clarity about the kingdom. And I figured you could help us frame something in for this month that would be helpful for our tribe. And maybe we'll dive in on this idea. We're living and leading in a day where it's never been more apparent that there are two colliding kingdoms, and they are not Republican and Democrat or right and left. There are, you've used that language, colliding kingdoms. Why is this important for leaders to understand today?
Well, it's important because otherwise you get stuck in the narrative and the common dialogue that is going on in the world right now, and in regard to left, right, Democrat, Republican. You can get sucked into that and then forget who we really are, our identity, and the fact that Jesus came as a king with a kingdom, and he came to represent the kingdom of heaven on earth. And that lends itself to a whole different paradigm than does the earthly, arguments, struggles, debates, controversy. Whenever you really step back and think, wait, like, we are literally citizens of heaven.
That's right.
And heaven has an opinion. Kingdom has a way of looking at life. Kingdom has a way of looking at family. Kingdom has a way of looking at morals. Kingdom has a way of looking at how we interact with one another, what our attitudes are. So our Bibles that we, that we carry around is actually a kingdom manual for our lives. And so it is absolutely imperative that in this age that we not downgrade what's going on in the world into some sort of humanistic thing and just keep it there, but that we really understand that this is kingdom view versus a worldview, or kingdom is a worldview. So let me just take a second and say that differently. Kingdom can be called a worldview, but what has to happen is that you have to allow theology into ideology. And a lot of people try to separate the two. And so that's why it's important to understand that when we say kingdom view is that we're talking about kingdom view being a worldview, a legitimate worldview, and not kept off over here in church. And then not carried out into the practical everyday life that we're living. And I think this is probably why I was so and have been so ready to talk about kingdom stuff, Brandon, and talk because I've always been interested in relevance with the gospel. I've always been interested in how the Bible relates to our life and how we break it down and live it out. And so when it comes to things going on in the world, it's always been for me attractive to talk, well, how then do we live as Christians? And so a lot of people think I just kind of went a different way. I didn't actually go a different way. I came into the maybe a tougher conversation and one that has more hot topics in it right now. But I think it's important, and we can talk about that if you want, but ideology and theology are not separated, should not be a big wall between them. Theology should be recognized and infiltrate, give us permission to infiltrate the ideology of the world.
I think this summer I want to give permission for second chair leaders to take a journey with me into looking at the kingdom and asking yourself, am I a kingdom-centered leader? I know for me, my journey began actually in the summer of 2019. Lindsay and I went to Israel that summer, and we were standing there on a mountaintop with a tour guide. We were looking at Lebanon. I think we could literally hear machine gun fire in the background. Reminds you you're not in America anymore. And the tour guide said something to us so striking. He said, you Americans, you think of everything through the lens of your politics. Everything for you is left and right, red and blue. He said, you do know that's not how we think of that over here.
Wow.
He said, this is spiritual. This is it slightly different language, but it was exactly what I started hearing you say was this is the kingdom of darkness versus the kingdom of God. And I think that moment marked me and began my journey of asking myself, am I a kingdom-centered leader? And I'm inviting leaders to take that journey because I think about it. I grew up in church. I've been a part of church my whole life. I've been on church staff, all of my adult life. And yet I really needed an answer. Am I thinking of everything in the lens of the kingdom? And I think this moment has called us to that. You've been in a teaching at our church this year called True North. And I'd love for you to just kind of tell everybody a little bit about that, because you've been talking about, I'll let you explain the concept of True North, and you've been talking to us about the ideologies that have been trafficked into our thinking subtly since, I guess, over the last few years, especially since 2020 and such. So why is it important that leaders understand the concept of True North and churches get clear in this area?
Just this morning, I ran into a guy I don't know, stranger I didn't know, and we had a really brief, quick conversation about, it started as the weather, and then I think me or him, one of us, I think it was me, I said something about, off to the east, the sun is shining or something, and he's like, which way is east? And off to the east, and then we entered a really quick debate. I think it's that way, and he's like, no, it's that way. Well, Seattle's like that way, and we entered into all this. And the interesting thing was the only thing that would have really settled it quickly would have been a compass. Like if one of us had a GPS or something like that, boom, it would have been settled. So the whole True North concept is to remind people that the whole world is we're brought together. Airplanes are flying by one true north.
That's right.
Mountains are being climbed by pioneers or people who are mountain climbers with a true north. Yep. And when you get in your car and you get an address, it is governed by a GPS system that is based on true north. Everything is based on one real big, simple truth that we will, if we think differently than that, we won't argue with it because it is absolute north. Like north is north, north is north. So I just feel like that in the middle of all the fray and all the things being said and talked about, this was for me something I wanted to stand on, something I wanted to teach our church, something I wanted to champion, was the idea that Polaris, which is the North Star, is fixed. Everything around it circulates, everything around it moves, that revolves around it, all the other parts of the heavens and the stars, they are moving. But Polaris is fixed. It stays as our true north. So if you think about truth like that, like if you realize and recognize that the world is created and the universe is created based on truth.
Yep.
And that Jesus was a champion of truth.
That's right.
Jesus said, I came into the world for this purpose, like to bear witness to the truth.
Yes.
And everybody who's of the truth hears my voice. And then you flip over to the opposite side, how Jesus described Satan. He described him as a liar. He described him as the father of all lies.
Wow.
Meaning every little lie that we let into our minds, every little lie that comes along every day, the lies all come from, the word father intrigues me because he basically, it's like he's producing.
Yeah, it gives birth.
He's giving birth to every family lie, every lie in culture and business, etc. So the metaphor for truth is the North Star. And if you can understand that in the world that you're living in, there's going to be many lies that are going to be veiled and promoted as truths. And they're doing serious damage to people, to family, to cities, to nations.
Hey, Leading Second, if this conversation is resonating with you today, I want to personally invite you to consider joining us over on our new subscription site, Leading Second Plus. We have a new course dropping this month on a biblical worldview. It's one of a growing library of conversations we have on leadership topics that I believe will help you thrive in the second chair. It's also a space that can arm your team. If you become a Leading Second Pro subscriber, it's a way that we can arm you with subscriptions for your entire leadership team to walk them through some important leadership concepts. So head to leadingsecondplus.com. The first 7 days are always on us. We'd love to have you part of our growing community on that site.
I asked the question, since I started talking about this last year, I asked this question to people: what is your number one enemy? And I love for everyone right now that's listening to this to consider what would you say if you had to sum it all up as one? Because I want to push out on the table and propose that the number one enemy we all have is lies. Number one, like if anyone listening today has another one, of course you might say the devil. Well, the devil is
the father of lies.
The devil is the father of lies. So the number one enemy of your having a God life, a good life, a blessed life is lies. And once you come in on those terms and you start to live your life that way and start to look for lies because they are your enemy, and I want to take them out. You start to look for lies in what is on the radio, look for lies in what is on the TV, what is lies on the podcast, where are the lies on social media, where are the lies, and you start boom, 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 almost like, okay, I'm gonna get rid of that. That is a lie. And you know what kingdom truth is.
Right. And
you live by kingdom truth, you recognize lies a lot quicker.
Yep.
And you take them out of your life immediately. Whether it's your personal life, it can even be in your own mind.
Yep.
Get rid of the lies.
Yep. I want to recognize there's a tension here. There's some listening to this that are going, yeah, bring it on. you're ready to get the gloves up and take the fight to the enemy. And there's probably some listening going, oh, good God, they're going there. Aren't we just supposed to be about love, And so I want you to hang on, because at the end, I want to talk second shared how we respond in these moments, but I want you to keep going here for a minute. It's important we get this right. It's important we have this conversation. There's tension in this. Talk to us about how ideas are being trafficked into our worldview. We are. I love, by the way, that the two things Jesus said under questioning from Pilate: "My kingdom is not of this world," and "I've come to bear witness to the truth." Is the two things he said under arrest, before conviction. So I love that that's the foundation for this. Talk to us about trafficking and how ideas are being trafficked into our worldview through secular culture, social media.
And honestly, even there's a lot of listeners today, and there are pastors who have podcasts and all of that you could listen to. That there's an idea today that, the gospel doesn't go into these conversations we're having right now.
Yeah, say that.
It doesn't fit there. And that's a lot of people talk theology, not ideology. And that's why I said what I did a while ago, is that theology is an ideology. And the sooner everybody understands and gets honest about that and quits avoiding it, the more Christ-like actually we become. Jesus taught in his longest message, he said, "You have heard, but I say unto you."
Yep.
That was the premise of Jesus was to bring kingdom thought, kingdom mind, kingdom concept. And he would literally say, okay, I know you heard this from your parents, from the people around you, from your secular system, but I say, what was he bringing? He was bringing kingdom to it. So what's happening when you say that thoughts are being trafficked in is that they are being trafficked in from generational mindsets and thoughts. They're being trafficked in media. They're being trafficked into friendships. Friends believe certain things, and you guys are hanging out together, and so they're being trafficked in by the world. I'll just quickly touch this. This is one that if you're listening today, rather than just reacting, and by the way, I think everyone here who's sincere should understand that the way you find truth is to look for it.
Yeah.
Not to reject everything you hear because it's not whatever you're hearing.
Right.
That's the only way truth can come into our lives. The only way Jesus came into our lives is because we opened our heart to it. So what I was just going to say, that I think will send rockets off in a lot of spaces, but right now there's a lot of talk about the Palestinian states and Palestinian state and the legitimacy of it all.
Yep.
And it's on our campuses, and young people are and then you start to ask them a question, having to do with the beliefs of the Palestinian people, the behavior, the attitudes, the concepts, and they really don't know. And they're out there waving signs, and they're doing it out of compassion, under the guise of compassion or empathy for people that they think have been mistreated or abused. And what they don't understand is the history on Palestine. 100%. They don't understand that the Palestinian, the word and everything about it, basically is it's an Arab. Yeah. They are Arabs. They belong to the kingdom of the Arab nations, and that this is not something we're just making up. All you got to do is study a little bit of history, the last 75, 100 years, and it's an invention. There's an invention, and the invention created is a lie. It's just with a strategy to destroy Jewish people.
Israel,
to destroy Israel. And so what you end up with is a whole bunch of young people today so gullible in mindsets, and people, when they hear it, well, shouldn't we feel bad for these people? They're getting hammered by Israel right now. Well, if you go back into their history and understand a little bit, they live for one main purpose, and that is to annihilate Jews.
Yeah.
And so if you understand that and a lot of the other truths, I'm trying not to get too deep or caught up in it, but what is called Palestinian right now is basically Egyptians in southern Syria, and that's all it is. And then a made up name that could inhabit area that actually is not their area and never has been. And so what is it? It's a lie. That's my point, is that there's lies. And if you'll just be honest about the lie and why it's born and how it got wings and how it's come to where it is, you start to get a different perspective, is all I'm saying. I don't really want to, I'm not here to say, well, Netanyahu should do this, he should do that. That's not the point. The point is, let's look at facts.
Yeah.
And let's not just get caught up in feelings.
Well, I think to your point, we in the West, particularly on our American college campuses, we trafficked in. So back to this point, we trafficked in this oppressor-oppressed dynamic as if Israel is somehow the oppressor here and the Palestinians are the oppressed, which neither of them would consider that accurate. First of all, that is a Western mindset that somehow, so we trafficked in. It's the same thing that shows up in race. It's the same thing that shows up in our, we trafficked that in, and it somehow framed this conversation that's completely inaccurate to people's experience in the Middle East.
Totally.
But it's inflaming, it's inflaming this idea. I guess I would say unnecessarily, because of ideas being trafficked. This happens other ways, I think, too. You've talked to us a lot about compassion, and I'd love to hear you talk about compassion, because you're gonna hear people talk about love their neighbor, and someone who's deconstructing their faith will often say, well, it's just about loving your neighbor,
right?
And that's all the gospel is about, and reducing all of Jesus' teaching down to one phrase, and cloak it in what they call compassion or love, or but we have to realize they're using that word differently than kingdom uses a word like compassion. And
so like, for example, the conversation we were just on having to do with Palestinian and Jewish, the people that are sticking up for Palestine are doing that out of what they would call compassion.
That's right.
If you go to the arguments about transgenderism, you would see that people are saying that parents should listen to their 5-year-old
compassion
and have compassion.
Yeah.
If it's a little boy saying, no, I'm really a girl in a boy's body, you should have compassion. So when you start to understand, that's why it's such a big topic, Brandon. That it is a misuse of a biblical base kingdom. What we say is compassion has been an abuse. So the way I taught about it in the True North series is that I called it the Trojan horse of compassion.
Yeah.
And in Greek mythology, the Trojan horse was a wooden horse said to have been used by the Greeks during the Trojan War to enter the city of Troy and win the war. And basically what happened is, for 10 years, the Greeks tried to take over Troy and had no success, and everything failed. The Greeks pretended that they decided to pretend that they were going to pay tribute to Troy because Troy was a horse-loving city. And so they build a wooden horse, and then they hide a select group of warriors inside of the horse. And all of a sudden, the people of Troy, oh, a horse, we love horses. Yeah. And so they allow it into their city. And when they allowed it into their city, of course, at nighttime, these warriors come out of the Trojan horse, and that's how they destroy Troy. And so when you look at all that's going on in our world like that, and you start to understand that there's a Trojan horse, and one of the major ones I think is just compassion. There's a Trojan horse of compassion where we have to understand everything that's called compassion is not compassion. And there's an authentic compassion, and then there's an alternative form of compassion, which is this Trojan horse. And even at an early age, this is a good example. Even at an early age, children learn at a young age how to get their way with their parents, by saying things to, like, dad when he won't let them have the candy. You're a mean dad. You're a mean dad. Well, what are they doing? They are, if you love me, then you would do this. And so they're manipulating by way of compassion. They're trying to pull a compassion string on a parent. And we've all, if you're a parent, you have had that thing play out. Now, that's as a parent when you have to decide, wait a minute, I know I love my kids.
Yep.
And I love them enough not to give them what they're asking for.
Yep.
I love them enough not to let them play in the streets. But they're saying to me, like, if you love me, you would. And again, it's trying to pull the thread of, it causes everything to fall apart. So everything that is called compassion is not compassion. And can I give a couple more examples?
Absolutely.
I'm trying to get this point through. Like in 2020, a lot of people were shamed and bullied into getting injected with a drug. And this is not to say if you got the vaccine,
right,
that you're wrong. It's not to say, just hang with me here. But the bullying that went on, where we were told, like, if you don't get the COVID shot, that means you don't care about the people around you.
Yeah, you're going to kill somebody.
You're going to kill somebody.
Yeah.
Like students at my grandson's school, they were told literally by teachers.
Yeah.
And many of you experienced that are listening today. What about your grandparents? What about, that's why you should get the shot and your parents should get the shot. So what is that? That's this abuse of what is called compassion.
Yep.
It is not authentic, real Bible compassion. So I think it's really important when we talk about, these sort of topics, whether it's a shot, whether it's the transgender issue with parents who are being told if you really cared about your children, you would let them do what they want to do, that we start to separate this and say, wait, you're using a word here. You're trying to guilt me into something. And that is not really, compassion. There's a secular book. It's not even a Christian book that's called Against Empathy. And it's written by, I believe, a Yale researcher wrote it. I mean, it's high level intellect, etc. But it's basically a book that breaks down the difference between what sympathy is, empathy is, and what compassion actually is. And a simplistic way of saying it, sympathy sees a person who fell into a dark hole and is sad for them. Okay? I have sympathy. Empathy, on the other hand, sees the person who falls into the dark hole and jumps in the hole with him, which helps no one. Okay? Compassion sees a person in a dark hole and is smart with the way they help the person. They put a rope down, they care, but they don't jump in.
Yep.
And the reason you could even say right now, it's horrific. I live in the United States and I love it, but it's horrific that we have the sort of debts that we have. Yeah. I couldn't, nobody listening to this, we couldn't be if we operated our homes and our finances like the United States does. We would all be in a heap of trouble. We'd be in jail right now, right?
Yeah.
Right? Well, but why are we in the trouble we're in? Because the way we're approaching what we call compassion is we're jumping in the dark hole rather than creating and putting down ropes to people who are in poverty and people who are struggling. So again, this is a Trojan horse, we call it, of compassion that you can find almost in every area of misguided, uninformed, deceptive approaches to life right now.
I think what we're calling leaders to in this conversation is to be aware of words and their definitions and where those definitions are coming from. I mean, I think you would say that this season has been so clarifying, but before this season, we had people in our church, we were all using the word love, but we realized we meant different things by it. Good. Some were pulling a definition from the kingdom of God. Some were pulling a definition from the kingdom of the world. Yep. Those are two very different definitions of the same word, love.
Very good.
Compassion, as you just said so well, very, very different definitions coming from two different kingdoms or worldviews. I've even heard it called, choice architecture. How the world will say things to us like, do you love someone who is gay, or do you practice hate? So that's setting up a binary that doesn't exist in the kingdom of God.
Good.
That's not the only option.
No.
There.
No.
But that thinking, that choice architecture is coming from a kingdom, and I guess we're just calling leaders to, when you hear phrases, hear ideas, hear words, recognize what kingdom these ideas and definitions come from.
Right. And I think today you're doing a podcast like this, and we're talking about this because we know that even, every pastor's not going to chat or have conversations or be able to discuss this, and especially not on our own. And so from an outside perspective, you're leading second, you represent leading second. And leading second, I would just say to all of you is that you can't just rely on what you hear. And I think that's what we're saying is if any time we need to be disciples of Christ and actual students of Scripture, it's now. Like if we're going to lead church, we need to understand things like this.
That's right.
And have it in our, whether you preach on it, teach on it, doesn't matter. You just got to have it in your, you have to have kingdom perspective in your approach to leadership.
I got a couple questions that are going to take a minute to wrap this. I want to ask you, first of all, a lead pastor question. And there are lead pastors that I think listen to this space. So I want to ask you a lead pastor question first. And that is, do you feel like it's important for a pastor to speak out and provide clarity on current social issues? And then I want to talk about the second chair response to that. How do we best support our pastors as they navigate how to handle really tough issues? This is not easy, what we're proposing, and we recognize that. So what would you say to a pastor who is trying to find their voice, find their way in this climate and speaking out?
Yeah, I wish and I believe that pastors should, at the very least, have these conversations with the teams that we lead.
Which you've done that even recently.
I do that.
Yeah.
And I think that is the very least. Those who might feel really uncomfortable, in Sunday services, I really am, I have more grace for that.
Sure.
A pastor friend of mine and I were talking about even geographical areas should be evaluated into this. I mean, I happen to be in, I'm hitting this. You would say, well, Pastor Kevin, you're in one of the most liberal, if not the most liberal part of the country and cities in the world and all of that. And I would say, yeah. And I am talking about it. What I would say is that there are people in more, in less liberal, more conservative areas of the country who are talking about it in a way that I would not talk about it. In other words, they would talk more harsh.
That's right. Yeah.
And use less logic and examples.
Yeah.
And they would head straight for, angels and demons. And I don't do that because of the part of the country I'm in. Yeah. My approach is factoring in certain things. My personality is that I pretty much believe that love confronts. And I'm wired that way.
Yeah.
I lead that way. I pastor that way. If another pastor is wired differently, I just have to have some grace is my point. I have to have grace for different pastors when it comes to their weekends and them considering people in the audience and people that are going to listen to them, how they posture it, where they go with it. I do think that every pastor and team should get alignment.
That's good.
And I do think that that's why it's important that we have these conversations during the week at the very least, and then among our leadership. So we have what we call the leadership quadrant, as you know, that we
Team
are
church.
now seeing churches use it all across the country.
Yep.
And
it's brilliant.
It's to develop and train and get leaders all on the same page with all the hot topic issues and have a vetting system so that we don't have a whole lot of different opinions when it comes to hot topic kingdom versus worldview, in other words. So definitely think at the very least, leadership teams have to be on the same page.
Yeah. I'd like to make a point there really fast. And I couldn't agree with you more that geography affects things. My own experience would ring true to that. I think the one thing I would add is that especially for younger people in our churches and our own kids, we have to remember our city might be red, but our phones are woke. And the example that I always go back to in my mind at my house out front, of course, I bought a home a few years ago, so now I have the constant battle of fighting off the weeds. Yep. You know, that's the ever-present job of home ownership. And we have a balcony that comes off of our house at one point, and we have a planter up there. This is a protected planter, glass around it on the second floor of a house. And yet one day I looked out there and there was a weed growing in there. And I thought, how in God's name did a weed get up a flight over a glass, railing? How in God's name? I can understand it in the grass and on the ground. And I think the point is we can't assume our young people are immune because they live in a red county or a red city or, what we think.
Right.
The ideas can get trafficked in an instant on an algorithm and, social and, all of that they can find their way places where we wouldn't think they would. Mm-hmm. And, of course we have our own teenage daughter. We're just so mindful of this right now and careful on this. So I think, that's my point I always like to add is the weeds are going to get trafficked in a lot of different ways right now on this. Okay. Before we wrap, I have to ask you one more question and I'm dying to hear your thoughts on this. What would you say to the second chair leader who wishes their pastor would speak out more? Mm-hmm. They wish, how do you navigate that in the second chair? And then what would you say to the leader that's uncomfortable? Oh gosh, my pastor just addressed, transgenderism from the platform. Oh my gosh, what's that going to do to our church? I mean, how do we navigate this in the second chair as our pastors are finding their voice, finding their way?
It's a great question. Yeah, it's a great question. I would encourage you, if you're a second chair leader and your pastor is not, is not addressing it all, to first of all be mindful of your own level of influence or access, and think about that. Like, do you have an opportunity? Because I think a lot of team members underestimate their ability, leading second, to actually have a conversation.
That's true.
With their pastor.
That's really true.
I think that you should understand that a lot of pastors that I know, they are not going to reject a conversation with a staff member or especially a leading second sort of level. They're not going to reject that. When it comes to something that, for example, you might be sensing, feeling, having to do with, is there a way to address this? And you can, use our name if you want, use this podcast if you want. I mean that sincerely. Yeah. I just think that if there's a way to say my desire would be that we could have conversations. And I'm not asking you, telling you what to preach on Sunday. I'm not telling you what you got to do. But in our team, I think we could be more aligned. I think we could be more together. We could put this thing to rest. We could, so that's I just think with a pastor, I would assume better, rather than worse would happen if you have a conversation. And whatever protocol is in your team, with us, it would be something to the effect of a short email about, why I'd love to chat some more about it, but just here's where I'm at, and could we chat? Because I would just like to support you and be alongside you as much as possible as I can. I'm not sure how you're feeling about that. The second question you asked was more along the lines of what to do when your pastor is talking about tough topics. And oh my goodness, he did say that. Yeah, you're uncomfortable. I think on that's one of the good things about us doing a podcast like this is we're really saying to you that if your vocabulary can grow enough to just support your pastor and your own understanding, I should say, and your vocabulary. He's not asking you to go champion something to everybody, but he does need you to support, because it's very lonely when a pastor ventures out and he doesn't really know who's with him and who's not. And that's what you have to do. Like when you go there as a pastor, that's why a lot don't go there, is you don't really know who's gonna, walk out, who's gonna cop an attitude, who's gonna be against you, who's gonna be for you. And I can say from experience that looking at my own team and them with glazed eyes listening to me and not really like, where are you going with this, PK? Like, what? I understand that feeling of loneliness. And I said a few weeks ago, our staff did a walk. I went into a rally that our staff does once a month, team rally, and they were teaching, two of our pastors were teaching on Pride Month. And they opened up the month of June, with Pride Month. Yeah. And they were just preparing everybody for that. And they didn't know I was coming to the meeting. That was what was cool. So they didn't do it for my benefit. Wow. But then they did a little Q&A with the whole team and staff that day. It was just really beautiful in the sense that I sat there and took it all in and remembered the day when I stood alone or felt so alone to lead our staff forward through the conflicts around us, wondering who's with me, who can stomach this, who can handle it. Right. And now I'm watching it. They're talking to one another about it. These two pastors were, they were putting up visuals on the screen. They were educating everyone. They were open up for, it was just a great, relaxed, enjoyable. And that's how far we've come as a team now. But it started with me. It started with my voice saying, here we go. And so when a pastor is being courageous enough to talk about it, please let them know that you support them, you're with them. And at the very least, the people around you should hear you, following up in the meeting, the huddle you're in, saying that was a great message this weekend. We really need to hear that, Yep. And that's the posturing in those two areas I would recommend.
I remember feeling uncomfortable. I remember thinking, my gosh, people are going to leave. And I had to get over the idea that the only job that we had was to add numerically to our church. I had to get over that thought that that's the only job I have, that nope, there's also pruning.
Right.
Pruning has to happen for a healthy garden, for a healthy plant. I just had to get really comfortable with it. And I think you'd say this, the beautiful thing is we've seen incredible new life in our church, absolutely, among people of color, among people of all socioeconomic background. Right. And so there's life there. There's absolutely life there. But, I never disagreed with you once theologically, but I did have to get used to it. Sure. I had to go, oh, this is, that attractional approach, we're kind of busting that a little bit here, and we're going to be okay with that. And
I had to survive when I wasn't getting any amens from the people I love the most, and I mean that. Like I had to be okay with that. Like I'm ahead of them on this journey. I need to like let them listen to me, break it out, break it down, do my best to talk about it the best I can. And I remember with our staff, I don't know if you would have been in the room when, I first asked everyone, have you read on the BLM website, what their mission statement is? And I remember how quiet it was in the room, because we have a very diverse church, and we believe in loving everybody. Right. So, I just remember the quietness and then reading it, and no one in the room had really read it. And this is our inner core, our staff, our team. So I had to realize, okay, I read it. I've had time to process it. I'm going to talk about it. Yeah. And I'm going to put it out there. And those who were of color, those who were whatever it might be, everybody, after they had a chance to like look at it, they're reasonable. They're like, wow, I did not know that. So I'm leading the way in a quietness. And then their job is to accept truth. Yeah. And embrace truth.
And champion it.
And champion truth.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah. So anyway, that journey, if your pastor does or has been on it already or does venture out in, just make sure you're there for them, because it's it starts very lonely.
Well, you're not alone. We are standing with you. This podcast is with you. And there's a whole lot of faithful pastors and a whole lot of faithful second chair out there that want to get this right. So thank you for your leadership in this season and your voice today. It matters. And hey, here we go. This month we're going to go there. It's going to get spicy, but we need to have these conversations. Thank you, Pastor Kevin.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. I am so excited for where we're going this month. It's going to be an incredible series of conversations on the kingdom-centered leader. I hope you'll join us next week for another important conversation. Until next time, Leading Second, let's all run strong for the kingdom and lead in an uncommon way together. God bless you.
It is our honor to serve churches and leaders across the globe. We equip ministry leaders with the coaching, events, and resources needed to embrace their calling, get it right with their pastor, and lead in an uncommon way. Visit our website, leadingsecond.com, to learn how we can come alongside you as you lead from the middle, from the second chair, for the second chair.